am happy to have you guys here for our 3-5 fact or fiction, and I am the teacher out at Silver River Museum.
All right, and my name is Alan Ivory, and I'm an outreach scientist with the Florida Museum with a program called the Science in Every Florida School. And today we're doing a lesson called Fact or Fiction. I'll let Miss Erin take it away.
All right, thank you, Alan. So, for fact or fiction, each week we're going to have a new claim. And some of you may have a paper, let me screen share, that looks like, can you see it, Alan? My screen did funny things.
The other screen needed a screen share, I think.
Oh, hold on, okay. Can you,
now
when
we're
I
good.
move that,
Yep.
can you see it?
Good job.
Okay. It popped all my videos onto that screen. So if you have this handout, this is where you can record some of your evidence today. Every week when we do fact or fiction, we're going to have a handout like this, and we are going to have a claim. So it's a statement that we want to find evidence that can either support the claim, help tell us that it might be a fact or factual, or evidence that doesn't support the claim, which would lead us to believe that it's fiction. Alan, why don't you tell us about our claim today?
All right. Well, to share our claim, I want to first introduce you to a video. And the video I want to share with you is this one. Let me go make sure I'm sharing my sound before I get going. Perfect. And we share this video with you, and then we'll discuss our claim.
Then, the meeting has officially come to order. Let us all say the pledge. I am a nice shark, not a mindless eating machine. If I am to change this image, I must first change myself. Fish are friends, not food.
Except stinking dolphins.
Dolphins, yeah, they think they're so cute.
All right, so with that, today's claim is that sharks are mindless eating machines. And to discuss this, we're going to go and talk about what are opinions and what are observations so that you can make a proper distinction of if that statement's true or false.
Okay, so why don't you guys think about your opinions of sharks? If someone mentions sharks to you or going to the beach, what is one opinion that you might have about a shark? Now remember, opinions are personal beliefs. They don't necessarily have evidence supporting them. So teachers, if you would please, when you poll your students, go ahead and type maybe just 1 or 2 examples of their opinions into chat. And we'll give you guys a minute to chat your opinions on sharks. And I see we have a lot of students joining us individually. You may chat your opinion as well. Go ahead and just save chat for just when I tell you to use it though. Ooh, sharks have big teeth. So, you know, having big teeth might actually be an observation. We could measure the size of their teeth. We could compare one shark's teeth to another. So tooth size would be an observation, not an opinion. Now, if you said all sharks have big teeth, that might be an opinion because maybe they don't all have big teeth. Okay, sharks are scary. That is exactly an example of an opinion. They're cool, they're dangerous, they're cute. All of those are fantastic opinions on sharks. Now, we are gonna find a lot of opinions about sharks and we can record them today, but those aren't our evidence. Our evidence come from shark observations. And like I said, somebody mentioned the teeth, that's one observation. Alan has just shared the aquarium of the Pacific, and this is their shark tank. Take a minute to make an observation of these sharks, and when you have one, type it in. Remember, observations are with our 5 senses. And in this case, we're probably just using our sense of sight. There is a red one. There was one that was reddish, wasn't it? That was a good observation. Did you observe them biting anyone right now? Somebody said they can bite. I have not seen one bite right now. They are staying in the sand. There were some down below on the sand. All right. So, oh, look at the pattern on that one. I bet you could make a good observation of that pattern. Somebody had mentioned black tips. All right. So let's do this, guys. We need to turn it over to a guest so that we can learn and make more observations of sharks. Alan, you want to introduce our guest today?
Yes. So our guest today is Miss Ashley Kidd, and she happens to be Zooming with us all the way from California. She used to work at the Aquarium of the Pacific and is currently a master's student at the University of Florida and knows quite a bit about sharks. So let's see what she has to say about our claim.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. You guys did make some great great observations of the sharks. You noticed that they were different sizes and different shapes. They had different patterns. And how many sharks do you think there are? Do you think there's like 10 or 100 or hundreds? This is another thing that we're gonna look at. So I'm going to share my screen. And can all of you see a picture with lots of sharks? Oh, full screen loading. All right. So this is just a fun little image of all the different sharks shapes. You probably saw a shark that looked like this guy in the video at the Aquarium of the Pacific. So that's a zebra shark, and that's just confusing because they have spots, right? But when they're babies, they actually have stripes. But you saw all different types of sharks, and sharks are found all over the place. So we're going to go through a couple of them and kind of see how our opinions about sharks may differ because there are so many different types of sharks. But before we get into that, I want people to write down, what does a shark scientist look like? So like the humans that study sharks, does anyone have an idea of what they might look like or what they might do? You can type it in the chat and just think about it for a second. And while you think about that, I'm going to show you some pictures of some people. Do any of them look like more of a scientist, of a shark scientist than not? So actually, all of these scientists are shark scientists, and they study everything from the behavior. So Eugenie Clark, she was the first behavioral ecologist, and that means that she studied specifically the behavior of sharks. And she started the Mote Marine Lab in Sarasota, Florida back in 1955. And all these other scientists study sharks from locally in Florida and all around the world. So there's not one type of person that looks like a shark scientist. Anyone can be a shark scientist. All right, so here we go. Have any of you guys seen either of these sharks before? Ooh, I see some, yeah, lots of hands up, awesome. So we're gonna observe some of these pictures. So up in the top corner, we have a bonnethead shark. So bonnethead sharks are found off the coast of Florida. They're only about 4 feet long. They live in this seagrass that you can see that it's swimming over. And so they like to stay near shore, near the bottom. But on the other corner, we have this wobbegong shark that you would find in Australia. And I'm going to give you guys an outline of it so you can kind of see that it's camouflaged. And I'm going back towards its tail and coming back up around its pectoral fins. And then his mouth is this big portion right up front, and his eyes are actually really well camouflaged. You can hardly even pick them out. But they're about the same type size shark, and they live on the bottom. Does anyone have any opinions of what they might eat? Like, would they eat really big? Would they eat really small? Would they eat fish? Would they eat invertebrates? If there's any comments, you can, maybe Alan can share them with me.
Yeah, so we have some people saying fish, some others saying whales, crabs, mainly lots of fish though.
All right, so in order to know more about that, so we know the size of the shark and we know where they live, but we need to make some more observations to figure out exactly how they might eat and what they might eat. So we're gonna look at their jaws. So over here, we have, this is actually what the jaw of a wobbegong shark would look like. Look at those big, sharp, pointy teeth. Those are probably about maybe the size of your thumb in length. And they have big, pointy teeth because they're ambush predators. So for those of you who guessed other sharks or fish, they can eat really big animals. They just lay in wait and they hang out, and then they use their big jaws to snag fish as they go by. Now the other side, same size of shark, but look at, these are tiny little, they're probably the size of your fingernail, your baby fingernail, all these tiny little teeth, and then they have molars. So can you guys feel that you have different types of teeth in your mouth? You can just run your tongue around the back and you can tell some are pointy, some have flat chompers. So this shark actually can use the molars to crush the invertebrates that they eat. So they eat crabs and snails and stuff that would be hanging out in seagrass. But what's even more interesting is how many people, you can raise your hands, how many people think that sharks eat vegetables? Whoa, we have some they want to see that they eat vegetables. Well, most sharks that we know are carnivorous. They only eat meat. However, you guys were right. These bonnethead sharks were discovered in just only a few years ago in 2018 to eat the seagrass that you see. So scientists further took these observations of sharks eating seagrass and then studied whether they can actually digest it. And they can. And in fact, they eat quite a fair amount of seagrass. So for researchers and scientists, we had to completely change our perception of what sharks eat just based on this one recent finding. So that's how scientists change and learn, and our opinions change over time based on the evidence that we collect. And that's okay to change your mind if you learn new things. All right, so what do you guys think about these sharks? So does anyone know what this big shark is? Yeah, that's a whale shark. Do you think, what do you guys think this big shark would eat? Do they eat really big fish? Do they eat whales or other sharks? Or do you think that they eat little teeny tiny krill, the little crustaceans that live in the plankton?
Whales? These all fish, maybe.
All right. Okay. So keep that opinion. And now this little shark on the other side is called the cookie cutter shark. And it lives in the deep, deep ocean where it's always dark and you don't see a lot of animals around. Do you think that this animal, which is only a foot or two long, do you think they eat off of really big animals or teeny tiny little food? And you can think about your opinions. But once we know more information and we make observations about their eating mechanisms, if you look, so this is a big figure with lots of information, but all I want you guys to think of is, do you know whales with baleen? They have like they look like really rough hair that strains out plankton. Well, it turns out that even though whales and whale sharks are not related at all, because of their big size, they use all the plankton that are teeny tiny, no bigger than the size of a quarter, and they filter that out through all these plates that you can see. So you can see they have little sort of stringy gills that they actually trap the plankton just like a whale would, and that's how they are able to filter out tiny plankton, and they cannot eat big animals, humans, fish. They just can't swallow anything bigger than a quarter. So even though it's the biggest fish on the planet, it eats the smallest. So that was one observation we made. But look at this little cookie cutter shark. Look at this jaw. Those teeth are huge compared to that tiny little fish. That would be pretty scary to come across. Good thing you guys don't have to worry about coming across this guy at all, because they live thousands of feet below the surface and you probably won't ever see it. But because they don't see food very often and it's really dark, if they see anything swim by, they're just gonna take a little cookie cutter piece of food off of the animal. So they do eat. You see fish, you see great white sharks, you can see dolphins and whales with like a little perfect circle off the side of them. And this tiny little shark eats not whole big sharks, but they eat off of big sharks. So depending on how they have evolved, even though they're the tiniest sharks, they can eat really big animals. All right. So for me as an aquarist, I was able to, so have your opinions changed? Are sharks mindless eaters? Do they all eat the same thing? No. Do some eat seagrass? Yeah. So even some fish will hang out with sharks because it helps them. They can just, these are pilot fish, this little guy hanging out underneath an oceanic white-tip shark. So these are big sharks that live in the great wide open ocean. And these little fish are getting protected by these guys so they can navigate large distances in the ocean with some sharky protection. So sharks can be friends too, just like in Nemo. So as an aquarist, I actually train sharks and eagle rays because it helps us manage their food intake. And we can actually give them specific foods that are appropriate for them. So we can see here, we've got an eagle ray. He's coming to a pink target, just like you could teach a dog to sit on a square or to come when called. If we put this purple triangle in the water and we only feed the eagle rays at this station, they'll come, and the other fish, because they won't be getting fed, won't actually come and steal the food from them. So we've got an eagle ray here. We've got a scalloped hammerhead shark here that's using a red button to come to. And then you can even train sharks. So this is the zebra shark, though the red one that it looked red in the video. But you can teach them how to respond to our tactile touch, and you can turn them upside down and they kind of go to sleep, so that you can do take blood draws or do ultrasounds. So if we want to see if a shark's holding eggs, or if it has a problem that we need to see, we don't need to stress the animals out, and we can actually do it voluntarily by calling them up and having them come over so we can work with them. So here's another thing: when the animals get a little bit bigger, you can train. This is Fern. This is the shark at the Aquarium of the Pacific that you saw in the video. So she's being stretcher trained. So she follows a little target and goes into the stretcher. So if we need to move them to a different exhibit, if we need to do an annual medical exam, just like when you go to the doctor. We can put them on there. They can hang out. They don't have to worry about anything. And they get some food when they're done. And all of this is done. You can see we even have a little log that says what time we did it, when we fed them, and how they responded to the training. So what the field biologists observe, we can actually use how they feed, how often they feed, to make the animals that we keep at aquariums healthy and happy. And with that, I'm going to open up the floor to questions.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so if my teachers would like to go and write in chat whatever questions their students might have, we'll give you about a minute or so. Just stay quiet so that you all can discuss with your class.
I like the Caden's response. Whoa.
All right, so the first question I'd like to go and ask then is, do sharks have small brains?
Well, that's an interesting question, because a lot of the times it's not how big it is, but how well you use it and how effective they are at integrating, which means combining all the information that they have from their environment to be successful, to survive and live in their environment. So sharks have been around longer than the dinosaurs, if you can believe it. So they've been around for hundreds of millions of years, and they've been able to use their brains. They're not as big as ours, but it's all relative, and they've been so successful, like you've seen in just a few of the hundreds of examples of sharks. They're probably sharks we don't even know about, and they've been able to use their brains very effectively.
So in your opinion, based on all the observations that you've gathered, is it fair to say that sharks are mindless?
I would definitely not agree to that statement. Sharks are definitely curious. They're inquisitive. If you only had a mouth to test the world around you with, you would end up using your mouth to investigate, if things are edible, if things aren't edible. And unfortunately, in this day and age, there's a lot of stuff in the ocean that sharks had never evolved to see before. So with plastic and pollution and humans coming, being on the coast so frequently, sometimes sharks will investigate, but it's not their fault if they end up accidentally biting someone because they think it's something that they want to eat. So they're very attuned to what they want to eat and where they want to go and where they want to be, and they're not mindless at all.
Speaking of investigating, how do they find their prey?
Ooh, so sharks have an extra sense. So it's a sense that humans don't have. They have something called electroreception. So they have special gel-filled pores in their skin that allows them to sense electrical pulses from a heartbeat in other fish, that they can track down their prey. So even if they can't see them in the deep ocean, or if it's really cloudy water, like nearshore areas, I'm sure you guys have looked into the ocean and you've seen, really clear blue, but then near the shore, it's really murky. They don't have to use their eyes, even though they have really good eyesight, but they can use other senses to identify where the fish are. And if they're in trouble or not. So they can sense a heartbeat or a weak heartbeat if there's a sick, injured, or dying fish, and they'll go after that. Because who would ever eat pizza if it jumped up and ran away from you every time? I mean, that's just too much effort. So sharks also aren't just going to go chase the fastest, fittest animal in the ocean. They're going to go after not so fit ones, which is really good because they keep the ecosystem in balance and actually do us a favor.
Now, Miss Kelly's class would like to know, how big can shark eggs get? Can you just talk about shark reproduction a little bit, maybe?
Well, there's all sorts of ways that sharks reproduce. There are some sharks that can actually give live births. They're like the sand tiger shark, so the really sharky shark, or mako sharks. They can give birth to live young. But if you guys are walking along the coast of Florida and you see what some people might call a mermaid's purse, it's a shell, or it looks like a piece of wood if you didn't know any better, or kelp, and it could have a little egg and a shark growing in it. So some sharks, they'll lay fertilized eggs in a big clump, either around a coral, and they'll come in different shapes depending on the environment. But they usually just look like a little purse, maybe the size of your hand or smaller, and there'll be a whole bunch of them, and you'll have a little shark developing. And then once they're big enough, they literally just like burst out of the shark egg and swim away as little baby sharks.
Question one of the students or one of the teachers had asked that I'm really curious about is, what determines the size of a shark? How might their size affect where they live, what they do, maybe?
Oh, well, yeah, in the few examples I used, some sharks, they're like the smallest shark. I can't remember the scientific name, but they're literally like the size they can fit in your pocket, and that's the adult shark. And that's the smallest shark we know, and we don't know much about them. And then the whale sharks are the biggest sharks, and they can get the size of a school bus. So imagine running to school next to a giant whale shark. And the cookie cutter shark, like we said, it's only a couple feet long, but they live in the deep ocean with lots of water everywhere. They live off the floor, but in the middle of blackness all the time, day and night. Light never penetrates that deep. And then the whale sharks, because they live and feed on plankton lives right at the surface of the ocean. So that's why it's really cool when you're able to track their migration patterns. Visitors can safely observe sharks just snorkeling at the surface. And where else? Did anyone see sharks that were by some seagrass, like the bonnetheads? Or in coral reefs? They literally live everywhere, from the Arctic to the Antarctic.
Ashley, I'm gonna stop the Q&A. I know we have lots more questions that didn't get answered, and teachers, if you want to email me some of those questions, if your students don't find the answers on their own, because I know they're really curious, feel free to send them to me and we can pass them along to Ashley and see if we can get a few more answered. Hopefully, we have given you guys lots of information to think about this claim. Sharks are mindless eating machines. And let's just take a really quick poll, either on chat or on your camera. Thumbs up if you think that claim is factual, you have evidence for it, or thumbs down if you think it is fiction, that they are not mindless eating machines, and maybe we have evidence against the claim. Okay, all right, and I hope students that you will take some time and fill out that handout. There are some critical thinking questions on the back. Teachers, if they do and they have some really excellent responses, send them our way through email. We would love to give your students a shout out next week for the excellent work they're doing. And Ashley, thank you so much for being our very first fact or fiction guest. We were so happy to host you. And have a wonderful day out in sunny California.
Thanks, and you guys stay safe. And yes, sharks are great, and most sharks are friendly. There's hundreds of friendly sharks and only a few that you might encounter that are.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Are great.